I am a passionate disability justice advocate all the way from Santa Barbara, California. The reason I'm here is I was visiting a close friend of mine who actually works as an intern for the art and does some of the work that they're doing, policy related, but really it's just to be in community, especially during a difficult time and especially during the anniversary of the ADA. But yeah, I also just graduated from college and grad school in California. So, specifically, post secondary administration. Basically, we know that the inherent culture of schools in higher education are, let's just say, not inclusive and have a lot more of work to do in terms of true inclusion. So all of my work is related to that and really helping students find the tools, whether that be social, emotional, or like academic resources to be able to independent living is a big part actually of that because it's community based. So, helping students develop that interdependent relationship between their community and perhaps their school or their college. But yeah, it's really about providing students the validating space, whether that's like physical or virtually, like we are now, to get through and overcome all the barriers that are imposed on us in these kinds of structures, again, that weren't initially designed for the diversity of disabled people, let alone disabled people, period. But yeah, if anyone's also really passionate about education and employment access, that's what I do. So I think that for someone who is non-disabled and has never interacted with disabled individuals before, I think that what I would say is we're probably one of the most or the most innovative and culturally rich communities because again we are the largest minority in the world and so we have so much like intercultural community and rich knowledge to give. It's just a matter of making those opportunities accessible to us. So again, across healthcare, things like education, right? And access to just basic need resources that really make it difficult for us to fully thrive in our everyday lives. And I am a neurodivergent individual as well as being physically disabled, like in multiple ways. And a lot of the interactions that I've had with people that are not part of the disability community, which is, by the way, the majority of people are professionals, is that you really have to not just give us a space at the table, but I've said this before, but actually rebuild the whole table altogether and give up your position of power and leadership at the table to then have us be leaders and which I think is hard to do, right? Like anything, and especially right now during this period of time where our social, political, and economic climate doesn't allow that. But it's really about, again, redesigning the table together and then allowing us to not just take up space, but also be leaders in those spaces. But even if that means giving up your expertise or what. And last thing I'll say is the what disabled people, whether they acquire a disability or they're born with it, like me, can teach you about the goodness of humanity and what it means to have human needs, especially in times of crises and challenging times, again, like we are facing now. So I and I think that we really have to ask ourselves, especially non-disabled people, what it means to call in a disabled person. And if, for example, you're not hiring any other disabled people, how that can also be a lot on us. It can be very exhausting. How do we create a culture, whether that be in your company or in your institutions, that is not doesn't invite that doesn't invite. And what I would say is I haven't met a disabled person, whether they're a woman of color like me especially, who doesn't feel like they've been tokenized or objectified in some way. The last thing I think is we can be inspiration to each other, if that makes sense, but not for non-disabled people. And I say that a lot to my students. Like I, I'm happy that I can be like a mentor and a advocate for them with them. But it's something else when it's a non-disabled people or non-disabled majority of people telling me that I inspire them. The question is, why do I inspire them? And it really should be because we have a vision. And I say we very purposely because it's not just me, it's multiple other people. And the people that we work with, like that's have jobs related to disability, this the SEL and some of these other councils, they also have a voice as well that is really important. That they have a different perspective as well. What it's like to work with us and not just objectify us. I hope that wasn't too much. And again, if I'm always open to being a resource to other non-traditional or just scholars in general. Like I'm really passionate about bringing our collective knowledge together. One thing I would say is that not only are every disabled person, like our embodied experiences, unique given across a disability. For example, we could have the same disability but not have the same experience, but it's also important that we acknowledge that it can be hard when for so long you've been the only disabled person. For me, that was the case. You know, growing up in the education system where I was the only person with apparent disability up till I would say about 8th grade. And that was hard. But then later on, the question is, why do we have to wait till college to be surrounded by other disabled folks? And that how that can be very challenging, right? Because we have what's called like access fatigue. We have things like conflicting access needs, meaning like you may want different things. For a good example of that is people with autism, like myself, have mm, noise sensitivity, but then people who are, for example, hard of hearing see like flashing lights. So thinking about that and how that might conflict. But the thing about the disabled community is we're always resilient for ourselves and resilient because we have to be, not because we want to. And so we're very innovative. We're problem solvers. So it's really about acknowledging that when you put two disabled people in the room or more, how that can be very difficult, but how, again, that provides an opportunity, as I was speaking to earlier, for our students and whoever to be called in on those conversations as well, to learn from each other, as well as the non-disabled community from us. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and I'm, as you can tell, very passionate about this stuff. So any chance that I have to talk about it is great. So